Hi everyone, welcome back to Box of Delights. I'm Ricky Royal, and today we're looking at The Old King's Crown, a tale of royalty, rebels, and ruses. Designed by Pablo Clark, who is also your artist, with additional development from Andrew McKelvey and Neo Tang Wei, graphic design from Andrew McKelvey and Ken Clark. I worked on the solo design for this one with Pablo, so today I'm going to focus on showing you the solo game, and we're going to do a little playthrough of the solo rules. Okay, so we've got a solo rulebook alongside a main rulebook. I've not opened this yet, so you're looking at this at the same time as me, though we were presenting at UK Games Expo this year, 2025. Unfortunately not soon enough to actually have the game for sale, but it's going into retail I'm going to say end of August, beginning of September, as soon as backers have their copies, I think. All right, so let's get this thing punched. Let's get the game set up, and let's show you how the solo game plays. We're going to have a good look at this game board shortly. Player boards. It plays 1 to 4. There's asymmetric factions. We're all vying for influence over the old king's crown. The old king has disappeared. Some say he's dead. Some say he's wandering the wilderness. We are one of 4 factions left vying for influence over this kingdom so that we can claim the old king's crown. This is a game of many layers. There's predominantly trick-taking, bidding, deck building, tableau building. There's all sorts going on in this game. In the solo game, we're going to be competing against a simulated opponent called the Simulacrum. They don't play exactly like another player. They kind of offer up a new way to challenge you. You play with all the same rules, but the Sim has got its own little rules. And you can actually play this co-op as well if you want to. If you want to team up against the Sim, you can do. But the competitive game is very cutthroat. All right, let's go. Let's get set up, and I'll show you how this plays solo. You're going to play one of 4 factions. Each of these comes with its own complications, its own nuances, and its own style of play. For your first game, I would recommend you either play nobility or clans, possibly clans. So let's, something like this. I think perhaps in this order. For your first game, play clans, then nobility, gathering, and then uprising. Each of these has its own unique style of artwork. This is one of my favourite cards, is the owl. Okay, the fox. This is a wonderful. They're all wonderful factions. But okay, so yeah, I think perhaps we'll play the clans in this. Perhaps we'll play the clans in this playthrough and give you an idea. There's Night Carnival. There's a little war tortoise here that's unfortunately got a little bit hidden, but he's in there. Great cards. Okay, we'll have a sneak look at nobility. Yeah, I think we'll play. I was tempted by nobility. I like playing nobility, but I think we'll play clans. Yeah, let's play clans for you. That's what I'd recommend for your first game. Only because I think they're a little easier to understand for new players. So you'll have a good look at the artwork when we get into clans. You need a lot of table space for this game. This is a big game, okay? Particularly if you're playing 4-player. But even for the Sim, although you're only playing solo, you do have to set up a Sim-specific area as well, which I'm going to go ahead and do now, and I'll show you the player areas. We'll start by taking a player board for our faction. I say we're clans. and then all the player pieces for your faction. So for me, for clans, all the green pieces here. We'll also need your site of power board, which for the clans is the old century. Each faction has its own site of power, and the site of power is where you're going to buy cards to build into your deck, right? Cards that are unique to your faction. So although everyone starts with the same deck of cards, you can build your unique cards from your site of power into your deck, which makes your deck different to everybody else's. Okay. All right. So this dial here represents your hand size, which everyone starts with a hand size of 6. You can see that this kind of turns as your hand size goes up and down. There's a mechanism called attrition in this game where, as in a deck builder, where every time you cycle through your deck, you'll reshuffle your discard to recreate your deck. Every time that happens, your hand size gets reduced by 1. This is called attrition. So there's lots of ways of interacting with your deck to bring cards back from your discard, so you don't suffer attrition, or perhaps make other players discard cards so they suffer attrition more quickly. And also ways to increase your hand size. Okay, so this goes up as well as down, but we start at 6. This piece here is called your herald. I'll learn about that as we get into the game. And these are your supporters. These are the wooden pieces. You start with 5 supporters. You also start with 4 tactics. Everyone's faction tactics are different. It's another way that each faction is slightly different. Organize these how you wish, but they're loose like this because they're flipped over. Once they're used, they're flipped over, they're spent. I'm putting them in season order. You'll notice that there's 5 rounds in the game. This is the round tracker, the standard. You can make a shorter game or a longer game if you wish. Perhaps we'll play a short game. We'll see. And each round is a year, and the year runs from spring, summer, autumn, and then winter. So we can put these kind of in that order to kind of help us, if you like, visually. The graphic design in this game is really great in that there's lots going on, but you can see when effects trigger by these icons. All right, so we're at a particular stage of the round. You can quickly see which card effects, which of your tactics, your board, your faction effects can be applied at what time in the round. I'm going to set the sim up over here. There's a small selection of solo components that are just for the sim as well. They do have a substantial deck of cards as it goes. And then we've got the forge, which I'll introduce you to shortly. The forge is a way to modify the difficulty of the game by bending the rules or forging the rules how you wish. Just be aware that when you're applying some of these effects, like unfortified here and vanguard here, they are applied during setup, so look out for that. Okay. So we start with 5 supporters. So for example, if you want to make the game easier, make the heat of the game a little more cool, and this gives you 4 cool. Relentless on the flip side gives you 2 more heat. So we measure the difficulty of the game by how much heat, how much cool we're applying. So we start with 5 supporters, but if you use the Vanguard Forge card, then the sim begins with 1 supporter token. Okay. Relentless says with 5. Okay, so changing the difficulty or the heat of the game. There's lots of these Forge cards. Nice. I was really happy with this idea. Pablo and I worked on the solo rules together, and one of the tricky parts of working on design, or the challenging parts, which I really enjoyed, was figuring out a way of having an automated opponent play kind of a trick-taking mechanism, and you'll see that play out. And having new ways of just experiencing a solo game. So when I design solo, it's really important to me that you're getting a new kind of experience, something you've never seen before in a solo game, and hopefully you'll get that from the Old King's Crown. Okay, let's set up our faction cards then. The first thing to do is get the faction cards that are going to go to your site of power. They're easy to spot because they have a lore cost in this triangle, a number in the top right corner here. Okay, so grab those cards and place them on your site of power. There's a couple of cards, different numbers for each faction actually, that may be in landscape rather than portrait, but again they have a lore cost in the top right. To place these on your site of power, these are your faction tokens. You might need some of these during setup actually. C Lanes has a setup instruction, so yeah, when you place your tactics, check these. C Lanes says place 3 faction markers here, so these are faction markers, right? They don't really do anything other than flag certain effects from other, your things like your tactics and so on. All right, so yeah, look out for setup instructions there. Okay. Right, so that's your site of power. So cards that can get added to your deck as the game plays out. But these landscape ones, these are kind of like permanent effects that sit in your player area. All right, so they'll have either they'll be passive effects or things that like this, all cards without. I'll talk about these icons in a little bit, but this helmet, this is the resilient effect. So all your cards without resilient gain resilience. So you make your troops more resilient, and also some effects will trigger at different stages. Okay, as an action. So different effects from different cards. On our side of power, we'll put those out the way somewhere. Okay. Now, as for the rest of our deck, we need to set aside our heir. Our heir is the number 10 card. It has this crown. He's our faction leader. Okay, set that aside. The rest of our cards we're going to shuffle up. We'll place that as a face down deck to the left of our player board. We'll take the heir into our hand, and then we'll draw so that we've got 6 cards. Remember our hand size in our hand, right? So we're going to draw 5 more cards. Okay, terrific. All right. Okay. The last piece we need to worry about is our player order token. And normally player order is determined randomly, but if you're playing solo against the sim, you always go second. This will go at the top here on the turn order track in the number 2 spot for us. Okay. There's one last piece of setup I've not done here, which are these kingdom cards. So this deck's shuffled up, and we're going to draw and fill these 3 spots with kingdom cards. We'll come back and have a look at these in a little while. And then lastly, because there's always 4 here at what we call the Great Road. Okay. And just place this up here on top of the deck. All right, so 4 face-up cards in the kingdom card market we call the Great Road. Right, that's regular setup done. So now we're just going to go and set up the Simulacrum. This is the sim board. Like us, the sim has a herald. Ours is a nice wooden token. If you want to replace this with one of the unused faction herald tokens, you can do. Likewise with their supporters, they have some punchboard tokens for their supporters, but if you want to replace them with unused supporter tokens from another faction, feel free. Okay, I'm going to use the cardboard ones as intended. And the sim starts with 3 supporters as opposed to the regular 5. Okay, but remember you can change this with something like the Vanguard or Relentless from the Forge. I might come back to these at the end, because if I play without them and then when we finish the game I can show you the Forge with a little bit more context around how the game plays. And in fact, if we go back to the solo rulebook, in the back here, it's got some pre-built simulacra. So the default game is to play without any forge cards, but there are some pre-built ones. So here's one I designed called Quintain, which is your introductory. It's got a total heat of -13. It's really on the cool side. Okay. And there's 5 of them built in here. There's the hardest one is called the Maker, which is a +15 heat, but you can design your own, forge your own simulacra. So although the rulebook looks long, just remember there's a lot of stuff in the back that is around stuff like this, okay, setting up scenarios for you. So for Quintain, this is a pre-built one. It tells you which forge cards to use, and then some other parameters for tweaking the sim. All right, and all of these parameters can be modified, and there's a whole section on how to do that. Also, we're going to be scoring points, so there's rewards for scores, calculating your scores, receiving trophies. Okay, this section tells you how heat's calculated and so on. So there's a whole section on the forge. So if you want to play your first game, I would say use the standard rules, okay, because you're going to have to learn the game before you can get into it. You'll probably get beaten. Then switch to playing Quintain, which is kind of like your training sim, right? And then step up perhaps through these pre-built simulacra. All right, that would be my advice. Yeah. So prepare to lose your first game as you're learning the game, right? That's normal. The sim has faction markers like us. All right, so we'll put those to one side. Look out for any setup instructions that might use them, okay, which you might do if you're using the Forge. The rest of their supporters, we're going to place in something called the lost pile. The lost pile is like a graveyard for all the lost pieces. All right. Typically, you place that at the bottom of the board, the rule book says, but just somewhere out of the way that you know is the lost pile. Okay. So I might actually put my lost pile just here. I'm trying to save space as much as I can. But let's put the lost pile over here somewhere. These are the tokens. There's 8 of them. These are bidding tokens. They're going to use these instead of cards to bid for Kingdom Cards at the Great Road. Give that a little bit of a shuffle and stack these tokens up. If you want to use a drawstring bag, use a drawstring bag. If you want to put them in a cup, do that. Right, but this is a stack of bidding tokens the sim is going to use. Right. Super. They also have a site of power. Here's their site of power. Okay. Again, we'll put that up out of the way. We're going to look for their site of power cards. Now, the pre-built simulacra will tell you which site of power cards to use, but again, they have a low cost icon in the top right. Okay. So pre-built sims might say use 1 puppet and 1 monolith and 1 idol, for example. But we're just going to shuffle them up and take 3 at random. And we're not going to look at them, we're going to keep them face down. Okay. So 3 face down site of power cards. Some forge cards may change this, make this more or fewer. The rest of its cards form its deck. Okay. We'll give that a shuffle up. Now, unlike us, they have 12 faction cards rather than 14 in their starting deck. Now, they always start with a gold card on top. So if there's no gold cards, you see this is a silver card. Just move that to the bottom. This is a bronze card. This is a gold card. All right. So move those cards to the bottom until a gold card is on top. There's their deck. All right. Just set that to the left of their player board. Now they've got 3 more decks that decide their behavior. We've got a fog deck, we have a scheme deck, and we have an ambition deck. Give these a shuffle up. We'll come back to these in a little while. But note that the backs of the cards are different. So do give them a good shuffle and pay no attention to the backs of the cards while you're shuffling. Okay. All right. So we've got ambition deck, scheme deck, and fog deck will do the same. Now the ambition and scheme deck, they work together as a pair, and these make decisions about which regions, and we'll understand that when we get into the game, which regions they're targeting when they're playing to their tricks. Sometimes these synergize, so this might be a Highlands card, this might be a Highlands card. Sometimes they don't. Okay, so like a human player, sometimes they play well, sometimes they play less well, sometimes they synergize their actions, sometimes they don't. Okay. For the fog cards, there's a huge stack of these. And again, pre-built sims will tell you which of the fog cards to use. But although there's a big deck of them, we're not going to use them all. Give them a shuffle up. But this determines the character of the sim we're playing again. What types of tactics will they be deploying and using during their games? And you're going to see all of these cards, so you'll get to know the sim. Although it's a game of few rounds, you're going to get to know the sim you're playing and potentially then develop counter tactics as you play to defeat the sim. Right, so this fog deck, like I said, is really describing the type of sim that you're playing, the character and style of game that they want to play. Right, again, a nice mechanism that I hope you've not really seen much of before in other solo games you might have played. There's 24 of these cards altogether. We're only going to use 6 of them. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Place them here where it says fog deck. Right, these are removed from the game. For the first round of the game, we're going to reveal the principal threat. We're going to do that right now during setup, and it is Siren Songs. We'll come back to this in a little bit. We'll place it here where it says principal threat. Lastly, we take one of their 8 bidding tokens. We don't look at it, we keep it face down, and this is going to act as their turn order tracker. We're going to place this up here at the top of the board in the number 1 spot, face down without looking at it. This is the active player token. We're going to take this and give it to the sim since they're in first place. We don't determine order on the first round of the game. We're going to skip these steps, which is why this tracker here is starting up here and skipped these steps. This tracker is going to go around the board and track the progress of the round, but we're skipping these bits. We've already drawn our cards. We've already determined turn order. Active player marker goes to the sim. And that's it. We are ready to start round 1 of the game.